Hey everyone, my name is Wedge. Last week, a random person who I've never seen in my life brought you a casual skeleton deck to have fun with for Halloween. A lot of you seem to really like the casual tribal feel of the strategy. Because of this, we're bringing you another casual tribal deck that personally I love a lot. That's right, time to talk about easily the most famous and powerful creature type in Magic, squirrels. If you've never encountered the amazingness that is Squirrel Tribal, you're going to be in for a surprise. A squirrel strategy is all about overwhelming the opponent on the board before they can react. You make a ton of squirrels, then you make them huge. That's pretty much it. First, we're going to go over the list that we put together. After that, we'll talk about a bunch of changes you can make to bring the strategy in a couple different directions. Yeah, squirrels are versatile. Time to go nuts. Yes! Our mana base is pretty simple, but includes some interesting cards you might not have heard of. 4 Swarmyard are necessary for the strategy's success. If we don't have a disgusting squirrel pit to regenerate our little rodents, then why even build the deck? 2 Deserted Temple allows you to get multiple activations out of your Swarmyard, but also synergizes well with some other cards we'll talk about in a minute. The rest of the mana base is simply made up of 16 forests. Squirrels need trees, after all. Time to talk about all the different cards we have to grow our squirrel army. We start with 4 Chatter of the Squirrel and 3 Acorn Harvest. These are both easy ways to make squirrel tokens, and they both have flashback. That's some serious value, especially on the Acorn Harvest. Since our version of the strategy is pretty weak on card draw, flashback is a welcome mechanic. The deck runs 15 creatures. 4 Arbor Elf are at the bottom of the curve. They help ramp your mana as well as create more cool synergies with some of our enchantments, one of which is a playset of Wild Growth. Being able to untap a forest that has Wild Growth on it just to tap it again for even more mana, yeah, it's time to ramp. What can Arbor Elf ramp into? In the 3 mana slot, we have a pair of Adaptive Automaton. The card is just good in tribal decks. It gets the benefits of whatever your chosen creature type is, along with providing a 1/1 buff for the rest of your squirrels. No real downside to running this. We also run 3 Squirrel Mob in the 3-drop slot. They get +1/+1 for each other squirrel in play. Even if you just spend your first 2 turns playing a Chatter of the Squirrel and flashing it back, this is a 4/4 for 3 mana. We opted to avoid a full playset only because the mob requires other squirrels to be useful, but other than that, total powerhouse. Moving right along, our next creature is a card I guarantee most of you have never ever heard of, and that's okay, it's from 1997. Liege of the Hallows is a 3/4 spirit for 4 mana. When it dies, each player may pay any amount of mana. Then each player who paid mana this way puts that many 1/1 green squirrel tokens onto the battlefield. Oh yeah, your opponents are not going to want to kill this while you have mana up. Sure, she isn't a squirrel herself, but she's going to make so many if she dies at the right time. Just letting her stay back on defense will do wonders against other casual decks. No one's going to want to set off that squirrel bomb. Trust me, run 2 or 3 of these. They're hilarious. Out of all the creatures in this deck, the best one has to be Deranged Hermit. That's why you run 4 of him. When he comes into play, you get 4 squirrels. Not only that, but they're 2/2s as long as you keep the Hermit around. Sure, you have to pay his casting cost all over again next turn, but if you can, you just got a ton of board presence. Plus, since he pumps up all squirrels, those tokens you've been making with Chatter and Acorn Harvest, yeah, those are much more valuable now. In addition to all our creatures and sorceries, we have a couple enchantments that add to our Squirrel Swarm. 4 Squirrel Nest and 2 Druid's Call are the final pieces of our token-generating machine. Squirrel Nest is just way too good to ignore. In addition to just flat out creating more squirrels for us, it has great synergy with Arbor Elf and Deserted Temple. Create a squirrel, untap the land the nest is on, create another squirrel. So simple yet so effective. Druid's Call is just another way to get value from our squirrels. If you have to stay on defense, might as well get some more squirrels out of it. Attach this to a Squirrel Mob that's already pretty large and you have a creature that generates its own power and toughness. It's a pretty cool interaction if you ask me. The rest of the deck is made up of what I would consider win conditions. We'll start with a pair of Parallel Evolution. Being able to basically double all your tokens on the spot seems pretty strong. We could have run Doubling Season or Parallel Lives here, but they don't give you the immediate benefit that Evolution does. In a Squirrel deck, you're not about waiting until your next turn. You pressure the board as much as you can, as often as you can. Next up is a pair of Beastmaster Ascension. Attacking with 7 creatures really shouldn't be a problem. Over the course of a few turns, you should be able to get at least 5 of those counters by accident. Once you do get to 7, all your squirrels being 6/6s, just come on, the game's obviously over. There aren't many strategies that can utilize Ascension as effectively as Squirrel, so there's a good chance your opponent won't see this coming. Speaking of surprising your opponent, the last 2 cards in the deck are copies of Tribal Unity. X and 3 mana to pump your squirrels +X at instant speed. You might be asking, why not Overrun? Overrun is a sorcery. This card is an absolute rout on defense. If you have some Wild Growths and Arbor Elves in play, you can blindside your opponent so easily. Even if you don't need it on defense, attack with everything you have, and when your opponent blocks, assuming you have nothing, you use Tribal Unity. Think about it this way. Who knows about this card? Not that many people. Overrun is the pump spell they're going to be expecting from you, not Tribal Unity. Take advantage of the instant speed and destroy them. Now that we're done with the list, let's do a quick review before we start giving some alternate deck ideas. You play Arbor Elves and Wild Growth early to ramp your mana. If you can't do that, you have Chatter of the Squirrel to start your army. Lay down some Acorn Harvest, Squirrel Nest, or Adaptive Automaton to pressure the board and strengthen your squirrels. Overwhelm your opponents with Deranged Hermit and Liege of the Hallows tokens. Then finish them off with Ascension or Tribal Unity. Basically just play your hand, apply pressure, and wait for the right moment to Alpha Strike. While this is our favorite version of the deck, there are plenty of alterations you can make. If you want to be as competitive as possible, you're going to want to find some Earthcraft. While it is banned in Legacy, it's still legal in Vintage, and obviously you can play it casually. Earthcraft and Squirrel Nest create an infinite combo. Make a squirrel with the nest, tap the token with Earthcraft to untap the land the nest is on, rinse and repeat. If you want to be competitive, that's the best way to do it. Just be prepared for everyone to hate you as a person. You'll also want to play something like Sylvan Library to get in your combo pieces faster. Another way you can go with this deck is by adding in Squirrel Wrangler. The card is hilarious, but requires quite a bit of build around since you sacrifice lands. If you go this route, which is super fun by the way, pick up a set of Life from the Loam, some Explosive Vegetation, or Journey of Discovery, and even a Crucible of Worlds or 2. This version is a lot more chaotic, so be aware of that. Lastly, if you want to go as deep into the tribe as possible, take out the win conditions in the original list and replace them with Coat of Arms, Obelisk of Urt, and Eldrazi Monument. That'll make your creatures real big, real fast. What do you all think about our casual Squirrel tribal deck? Is this a strategy you'd be interested in playing? If you enjoy these kinds of videos, let us know in the comments. We're genuinely interested in what you have to say, so definitely let us know what you're thinking. As always, subscribe for the latest and most reliable Magic the Gathering information you could ever need. This is the Manosaurus, I'm Wedge, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Wow.